Support comes from
Entergy provides much more than power. We support science and engineering at local schools to build a brighter path to better jobs and help prepare the next generation. Because together, we power life. Entergy.
additional support provided by the Fred B. and Ruth B. Ziegler Foundation and the Ziegler Art Museum located in Jennings City Hall. The museum focuses on emerging Louisiana artists and is an historical and cultural center for Southwest Louisiana. And the Foundation for Excellence in Louisiana Public Broadcasting, with support from viewers like you.
Louisiana needs a permanent solution.
The fiscal cliff is a short-term problem. What about the state's chronic issues?
Technology has certainly come a long way.
The history of forecasting hurricanes.
The water level in the Birdsfoot Delta is high, and it's getting higher, and it is drowning. The cane is actually drowning.
New analysis means new issues about the die-off of Rosa cane.
Hi everyone, I'm Moreau. Much more on those stories in a minute, but right now on SWI, a check on some of the week's other headlines.
A bid to ban abortions after 15 weeks pregnancy has become law in Louisiana. Governor John Bel Edwards signed the proposal Wednesday. It will only take effect if a federal court upholds a similar law in Mississippi. The measure imposes a prison sentence for someone who performs the procedure after 15 weeks. Sponsor of the bill, Democratic Senator John Milkovich, says the state is moving to protect the unborn. Mississippi enacted the law in March. The governor has agreed to require Louisiana public schools to display "In God We Trust" in their buildings. His office announced Tuesday that it had signed Senator Regina Barrow's bill into law. Schools will have to fulfill the requirements by the 2019-20 school year. New Orleans restaurateur Ella Brennan passed away Thursday morning at her New Orleans home. Best known for Commander's Palace, she had a profound impact on the culinary life in New Orleans and influenced the hospitality business across America. She and her siblings helped establish the famous Brennan's restaurant in the French Quarter, but quit working there in 1974 after an inheritance dispute. She returned in 2015. Brennan mentored chefs such as Paul Prudhomme and Emeril Lagasse. She helped put New Orleans on the map as a modern culinary destination. Ella Brennan was 92. The Advocate newspaper reports the state auditor has examined the financials of the State Highway Safety Commission and found big problems. The audit says employees clocked hundreds of hours in excessive overtime, misused thousands of state and federal dollars, allowed unauthorized travel expenses, and failed to properly track leave time. They looked at finances between July 2016 and August of 2017. Katara Williams, who now works for the Southern University system, headed up the commission during that time.
Well, the clock is about to strike midnight on the state's unresolved budget. So where are lawmakers on all this? Are they close to plugging a $648 million gap? They don't appear to be, even though we are past the halfway point now of this special session. So here to discuss where we stand and who gets hurt from the cuts, Charmaine Cassiope, Chief Operating Officer, United Way of Southeast Louisiana; Anita Begnaud, she is the Senior VP of Governmental Affairs and Communications for One Acadiana; and Gerelda Davis, Executive Director of Louisiana Primary Care Association. First of all, before we get into the meat of what we're talking about, I think we know what United Way does, but you have a study that we're going to get into also that's been funded by United Way that really looks at how Louisianians live and survive in this state. If you could talk about that a little bit.
Well, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to be here today. And you're right. United Way of Southeast Louisiana is one of 12 United Ways statewide. And I'm thrilled to say that they pooled their resources and actually did an in-depth analysis because, as I'm sure you know, United Way is really a health and human service provider. We work with our collaborative partners and our investors to really try to make smart strategic investment in the services that help our citizens. But what we were discovering is a vast majority of our citizens are our working poor. We did this analysis in this study, and we termed them ALICE, which stands for Asset Limited, Income Constrained, but Employed. ALICE is most likely an individual you run into countless times during the day. ALICE is sometimes a single mother raising 2 children or a child alone. Alice has 1, 2, 3 jobs. Alice is caring for her mother in a hospital or a nursing home.
The Alice study.
Alice.
I like
Alice.
that very much, and we'll talk more about that and how Alice is affected by all this. Tell us about One Acadiana.
So we are the Regional Economic Development Organization and the Chamber of Commerce for Lafayette, but we serve a 9-parish region working with local economic developers, businesses across our entire region. Our main goal is to focus on protecting and preserving jobs that exist in the region and the state, and also to attract new jobs to the area.
Yeah, you'd like to bring growth into the region. The state would like to do that. Louisiana Primary Care Association?
Sure. We are the statewide health system network for community health centers, or what are also known as federally qualified health centers. We have over 36 organizations that operate more than 250 clinics throughout the state, and we say that we are the safety net for the state in reference to healthcare services, primary, behavioral health, and dental health services for over 385,000 patients here in Louisiana.
Okay, you all are here not to celebrate what's happening in the legislature and what's been accomplished so far, if anything has. You're concerned, there's anxiety, there's worry. Let me ask you, first off, the House prefers bills that would renew 1/3 of the expiring sales tax, but that would be $300 million short of the state's budget needs as it stands at this point, and things can change. How does that impact each of you in what you're trying to accomplish? I can't imagine that driving business to Louisiana if people look at Louisiana and know that we're always seemingly behind the 8 ball.
Yeah, well, we know that Louisiana needs a permanent solution to our long-term budget problems if we want to grow and protect our economy. What we saw just last night on Thursday was that the Rev and Fisk Committee on the Senate side said, well, if we can't close this gap with the sales tax renewal of a portion of the penny that we currently have on the books, then we're going to have to look to businesses, the utilities that they pay, the exemptions that they have, both when they already exist here and when they're thinking about coming here. So for us, if we put that burden on businesses, how are we going to attract new businesses to come here if there's so much uncertainty? That's what businesses are looking for. They're looking for certainty, and they want to understand what their bottom line is going to be. And Louisiana just can't seem to figure that out.
What about the United Way, the impact of this so far?
Well, I can tell you where Alice is concerned and where United Way is concerned. We believe we have a moral imperative to actually find the solution that these beautiful Alice citizens who are hardworking in our community, so that they can realize the services that they desperately need. I would call attention to the fact that in Louisiana, 48% of our people are in fact Alice. These people are struggling. They're more likely to not have a salary that pays them above a minimum wage.
That's an
many
enormous
of them. And I have to tell you, that is requiring them to depend on services that, in my humble opinion, only the state can provide. Now, I'm privileged to say United Ways across Louisiana are making financial investment in programs that supplement the services that are made available through the various departments of state government. But our Alice families depend heavily on those services to be able to survive and to thrive. And so I'm asking our legislators when I'm at the Capitol, because I do a lot of the advocacy for our United Way, and what I'm saying is help leverage the investment that your not-for-profits are making in our communities to build resilient communities, and match that with reaching a solution so that we reach this fiscal cliff and we solve the problem.
Let me ask you,
Sure.
plugging just part of the gap,
Sure.
that can't be great for
It can't,
primary care.
because of the cuts that they are talking about making, especially for the Louisiana Department of Health. Those types of things in mental health services, which we provide at our clinics, it would not be helpful. When we know that our patients receive the services that they need, they are able-bodied, they are able to go to work and to make an economic impact in the community, and that's all we ask. Help our patients to be able to go to work and do what they have to do. But I agree with both of these ladies. We have to have a budget that's secure, long-term, not something that each session that we have to look at and be afraid about. Our patients need stability just like businesses need stability. And if we have that, like for the Louisiana Primary Care Association, our clinics, just in 2016, we had over almost a $567 million economic impact on the community. Our centers employ those patients that come into our clinics. They're on our boards, and so they are the working poor, and they also need access to these types of services and access to this funding.
Charmaine, let me ask you this. How will the sales tax affect low-income people?
Well, you know, I think it's fair to say that sales tax are always viewed as being regressive, and they really fall, I think, heavily on our working poor and our poor in the community. But I have to be honest, if you look at the research, while we want to be able to be part of the compromise, what we believe is there are solutions that if they can reach a compromise. There's also a supplemental bill that was introduced by Senator J.P. Moreau, Senate Bill 10, which actually would provide our Alice families some relief because it would expand what is currently the 3.5% to 5% earned income tax credit. Now, I say that because over 500,000 of Louisiana citizens claim that tax credit now. It's been in existence in the federal government since 1970s. I'm thrilled to say that we at United Way led Louisiana to actually embark on being one of the first communities in the South to match the federal earned income tax credit. It's currently at 3.5%. We would love to see it go to 5%, because while $40 might not seem like a lot in an increase, $40 could be a month's worth of diapers for an Alice mom raising a child. Yes. I believe that there are solutions like that that are innovative, and while the sales tax is viewed as regressive, we can actually help to modify that by allowing the earned income.
Well, I want to bring in business a little bit here. In a Senate committee this week, there was discussion about keeping exemptions scaled back. How does that affect the ability to recruit, Anita?
So one of the incentives that's up for discussion is quality jobs. And we've heard legislators across both sides of the aisle say that that's our best tool in our economic toolkit. We want to make sure that we provide quality jobs for citizens in the state of Louisiana, and we attract the types of companies that can do that. And when we look across the country, incentives are a part of the economic development game. And we have to make sure that we are competitive as a state, or else companies are going to look to go elsewhere. They're not going to look at us when they're thinking about relocating. And unfortunately, if we can't figure out our tax structure and provide that certainty and stability that businesses and people across the state need, then companies that exist here may start to look at other places where they can find that stability.
You know, we see a lot of short-term solutions, but we have not seen anything that's going to sustain so far. It seems it's been years, but we're not seeing that so far in this discussion, are we?
There are pockets of compromise going on, but for the majority of it, there aren't, and we need that. We can't have just pockets and someone to say, okay, I'll introduce this bill, but you don't have the support that you need on both sides. And we need support on both sides to get this done. It's not about Democrat, it's not about Republican, it's about the citizens of Louisiana who need them to step up and do their job to make sure that our government is funded, and so that we can stop being 50th or 49th and can move up and have a quality of life for our citizens and attract the businesses that need to be here, attract the doctors that we're trying to get in our clinics.
Sure.
Because if there's not education, there is not health care, or there are not the good jobs, we're not attracting those providers to our clinics or our state either.
It's a no-brainer that's not attractive for business. So you're in an uphill battle constantly, wanting to lure people and keep people here, I would think.
I've seen compromise happen. I've seen people across the aisles come together when it was important. it is time to do it. We don't have more time. The
Right.
special session ends at midnight on Monday, and if we go into another special session, I don't know what the temperature is going to be like in the Capitol. We need to capitalize on the opportunity right now to work together for the people of Louisiana. Put politics aside and think about the people.
Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having us.
Let's shift gears a little bit. The tracking and forecasting of hurricanes is a science, and even still, Mother Nature pulls surprises on the experts year after year. I sat down with state climatologist Barry Keim to talk about forecasting as far back as we know it and the top 3 innovations in technology that have changed how we watch and prepare for these storms. As we move into the official start of hurricane season, we've decided to look back at the history of hurricane forecasting, weather forecasting. And Barry, there is one item that happened in the 1840s that is something that made weather forecasting possible.
Yeah, so that's the telegraph. And essentially what the telegraph enabled us to do was obviously, have communication over vast distances, but it gave us the ability to know what was going on simultaneously across vast distances. And that eventually gave us the ability to produce weather maps. So we knew what was going on at a specific time all across the United States and even beyond in some cases. And we were able to start building maps to know what the pressure looked like, where it was raining, where it wasn't raining, where it was hot, cold, and so on. And that was a major advancement in our understanding of the weather, which basically built the foundation for forecasting.
But describe weather forecasting in the 1800s and even in the late 1800s.
Well, it's very crude. I mean, people don't have television, so there aren't television meteorologists.
They don't have radios.
They didn't have radios. For the most part, people would go outside and look up in the sky, and that was forecasting.
Right.
But in a more formal sense, it was really done more on analog forecasting. What happened in the past was the key to understanding what happened in the future.
Describe that for me.
So basically, if you have a set of conditions that transition into another set of conditions, if you have those set of conditions, you should assume that you're going to transition again in a similar fashion as to the way things played out in the past.
But that doesn't always pan out by any stretch, right?
No, I mean, it works some of the time, but it's certainly far from perfect, and it's a pretty crude way to do forecasting. 1893, that was the Chenier Caminada storm here in Louisiana. About a 16-foot storm surge rolled up into an area right near Grand Isle in the Chenier Caminada area. There was a hotel there, and probably 2,000 people drowned in that particular storm. Pretty horrific. But again, the forecasting back then was really crude. That storm rolled up with people not knowing essentially anything. And only 7 years later, in 1900, we had the Galveston Hurricane. And that was another example where we knew there was a storm hitting Cuba in 1900 because of these modern telecommunications. And the Cuban Weather Service let us know in the United States that there was a major hurricane hitting this area, and they essentially warned the Gulf Coast because they knew that storm was headed to the Gulf Coast. The National Weather Service in the United States, however, using analog forecasting techniques, basically thought that storm was going to roll up the East Coast, which is what many previous hurricanes in that area did. And as a result, they gave no warning to Galveston, and little did they know, a couple of days later, this major hurricane with a 16-foot storm surge rolls over the island, killing. In fact, that's the most deadly hurricane in the United States. Somewhere between 8,000 and 12,000 people drowned in that storm.
They don't even know what the number is, but they give official estimates of those who died.
Correct, yeah. It was devastating, and Isaac Klein was the meteorologist on the island in charge of forecasting then, and he saw the swells rolling up on Galveston, and he knew something was up, and he did sound some alarm bells pretty early on, but by that point it was too late. I mean, the island was just a little bit too isolated, and they couldn't get enough people off the island.
So when did it stop being that someone, say in Grand Isle, would walk outside and say, oh, well, yesterday was pretty, but hey, it looks kind of rough out there now, there must be something coming? When did that change?
Well, in the very early part of the 20th century, so the early 1900s, with these telecommunications, our ability to start producing weather maps, the weather forecasting starts developing a little bit, and we know a lot more at that point than we knew at any point earlier in our history. So early conception of forecasting really gets rolling, I would argue, in the early 1900s. Of course, there's another thing going on at this time that became very important. Wasn't being used then, and that's aviation.
Yes.
So the Wright brothers, they get their first flight taking place in 1903.
Right.
Aviation continues to evolve, but it's not being used in the forecasting world until after World War II. Now, during World War II, we had major advances in aviation technology. It wasn't being used, though, until after World War II. In the late 1940s, then we start using planes to fly out into the suspicious areas. We can monitor the storms better, we start gathering more information, and we're much better able to track the storms as well using aircraft.
It's hard to imagine the National Hurricane Center wasn't officially formed until as recent as 1965.
That's correct. Prior to that, it all fell on the Weather Service, and the Weather Service, prior to being called the Weather Service, was called the Weather Bureau. So back in the the early part of the 20th century, it was the Weather Bureau. So the Weather Bureau basically formulates this initial inception of a hurricane center, which then formally gets constituted in 1965. Satellites was the next major paradigm shift. And Hurricane Camille happened in 1969. So satellites were just, we were just starting to put them up, just starting to understand them. They were in existence in 1969.
Right.
So I would argue that was sort of maybe the first step in the right direction in doing what we would call modern forecasting, was monitoring Hurricane Camille. The technology is inching along. It's getting better and better and better. We're able to get satellites that have more higher resolution. We can see what's going on much better and gather more data. And the forecasts are getting better and better and better, although there's some thinking that those cones, the cone of uncertainty, there's some thinking that we may have hit the upper limit on our ability to forecast landfalls right now until the next major paradigm shifting technology comes about. The technology has certainly come a long way, but the three main changes was the telegraph, airplanes, and then satellites. And until something else major comes along,
We're waiting for the next one.
We're waiting for the next one. And as of right now, I don't see anything in sight that's gonna rattle this world in any major way.
What we have now is a new hurricane season officially beginning June 1st, and we'll see how it plays out. Barry, thanks so much for being here.
Hey, it's my pleasure. Thank you.
Always fun to talk with Barry Keim. Hey, you remember this time last weekend, the Florida Panhandle watched Tropical Storm Alberto eventually make a Memorial Day visit. The storm did not just evaporate, though. Late this week, it became the first tropical system to hit Lake Michigan since record keeping began. Since the year 2010, every 2 years in New Orleans, the State of the Coast Conference brings together scientists, industry and business leaders, nonprofits, and others, all with one agenda: to use the latest information available in the battle to save Louisiana's vanishing coast. This trade show is like few that you will find because everything in here involves something that can help save and preserve Louisiana's coast. Like, for example, oyster shell recycling program. Also here is a place where you will find information and learn things that are happening for the very first time. When talking about State of the Coast, Jimmy Frederick, you're one of the guys to tell us all about this big event going on.
I am lucky enough to do that. I'm the communications director for the Coalition to Restore Coastal Louisiana. And this is an academic conference, and this is a conference where people share their scientific discoveries and research. They get on the sidelines and talk about new ideas and new information. And as important as the breakout sessions are, and we're really talking about new research, it's those side conversations that really make the most difference, because things start clicking when you just start talking to other people, and that's really what's exciting about this one.
Those of you who know about the coastal problems are familiar with the rosicane issue and the loss of those plants so vital to holding the soil together. Dr. Linda Bowie from LSU, disaster ecologist, you have new information. It's really your discovery about the rosicane, and you broke that news here at this conference.
Yes, I did. My colleague Brian Schneider and I were looking at the cane issue. I'm an entomologist by training, and we have looked at the scale, but we think the scale insect that people are saying are killing the cane is actually a symptom of the problem. And what we discovered through almost triaging some other factors, that what came up in our data analysis was the water level in the Birdsfoot Delta is high, and it's getting higher. and it is drowning. The cane is actually drowning.
You're looking at the sign of two sister companies founded in 1981 in Denham Springs, Industrial Fabrics and Premier Concrete Products. And Cody Colvin, you work for this company. It's a company that uses concrete and other products like that to save our coast?
Yes, sir. So we have several different products. You know, there's a lot of traditional things out there, such as the rock and marsh creation. We try to offer a little different variety of
here's
products.
one right here.
Yes, sir.
Like, how can what does this do?
So this is our Triton marine mattress. It is a demonstration product that was done back in 2008 called T45. And so the idea of this product is when you have softer soils that you can't really lay the rock down. To lay this down, it has a great job of accumulating oysters as well, keeping that bank line stable.
Is it shoreline stabilization?
Yes, sir.
Kendall Valentine is an LSU student who is a student who will help us in the future in preserving the coast. And why is that? Why is the information you're learning different than those may have learned 20, 30 years ago?
Well, I have so many great tools at my disposal. So I do computer modeling of how the coast is eroding. So basically I have a model that calculates what's happening. And even my small laptop can do that, which probably 20 years ago would be a computer that took a whole room.
Exactly. And your passion is amazing.
Yeah, well, I love my job. I love not only the computer part, but a lot of my research involves getting on a boat and getting out and looking at those marshes and making sure that my calculations are correct and matching up what's going on in real world.
Why would you say that a conference like State of the Coast is so important?
Well, the main thing is when I'm doing my science, I mostly talk to scientists. And here there's a lot of scientists, but there's a lot of people actually doing the restoration projects and actually working with people. So I think getting to know all those different stakeholders is very important, so I can keep that in mind when I'm doing my work.
Well, I'm glad that you're here and our future is in your hands. Nice to meet you.
Thank you very much. Nice to meet you too. Thank you.
The State of the Coast Conference wrapped up today with a single-day mini-conference experience known as Restoration on the Half Shell. It was more for the lay person wanting to know more about our land loss crisis, so you didn't need a PhD to understand it. That is our show for this week, everyone. Remember, you can watch LPB on demand on your phone or tablet with our LPB Anywhere app. The download is free from your app store. You can catch LPB news and public affairs shows and other Louisiana programs that you've come to enjoy over the years. And please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For everyone here at Louisiana Public Broadcasting, I'm Andre Moreau. Thanks for watching. Until next time, that's the state we're in.
Support comes from
Entergy provides much more than power. We support science and engineering at local schools to build a brighter path to better jobs and help prepare the next generation. Because together, we power life. Entergy.
Additional support provided by the Fred B. and Ruth B. Ziegler Foundation and the Ziegler Art Museum located in Jennings City Hall. The museum focuses on emerging Louisiana artists and is an historical and cultural center for Southwest Louisiana. And the Foundation for Excellence in Louisiana Public Broadcasting, with support from viewers like you.